43% of American workers earn less than $30,000 a year. That's not a small demographic. That's nearly half the workforce. So let's say you're bringing home $2,000 a month after taxes. That might be a retail job, a part-time position, a gig worker grinding through apps, or someone just starting out at their first real job. $2,000 a month sounds like it could work. On paper, it almost does. Rent in most mid-sized American cities will consume somewhere between $800 and $1,200 of that immediately. Let's call it $1,000. So you're at $1,000 left. Car payment or public transportation, another $200 to $400. Let's call it $300. Now you're at $700. Groceries, utilities, phone bill. There goes another $300 to $400. Now you're at $300. That $300 is your entire buffer. For the month, for emergencies, for anything unexpected, for a tire blowing out, for a doctor's visit, for your kid needing new shoes. And here's where the math gets cruel. At this income level, you are not building anything. You are maintaining. Every month is a triage exercise. You are not thinking about retirement accounts or investment portfolios. You are thinking about whether this paycheck clears before the rent is due. The Federal Reserve has found that roughly 40% of Americans would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 expense. $400. That's one bad day. One flat tire. One emergency room copay. This is the part that rarely gets talked about honestly. Poverty is expensive. When you can't afford a security deposit for a better apartment, you stay in the expensive month-to-month place. When you can't afford to buy in bulk, you pay per unit at the corner store, which charges more. When you can't afford a reliable car, you spend more on repairs, on late fees when you're delayed, on ride shares when the car finally gives out entirely. Every system in modern American life has a discount for people who already have money and a surcharge for people who don't. The credit score is a perfect example of this absurdity. You need credit to build credit. Banks charge higher interest rates to the people who can least afford higher interest rates. The person making $2,000 a month, if they carry any credit card debt, is likely paying 20 to 25% annually. The person making $50,000 a month might be paying zero because they pay it off or qualify for cards with introductory rates. Same product, opposite pricing. Completely logical from the bank's perspective, devastating from the borrowers. And what about savings? The math here is almost offensive. If someone at this income level manages to put away $50 a month, which requires serious discipline given the margins we just laid out, they accumulate $600 in a year. In a high-yield savings account earning around 4%, that generates $24 in interest annually. $2 a month in passive income. The system is not broken for this person. It was never designed to help them. So they work. They survive. They manage. And if nothing catastrophic happens, no medical emergency, no job loss, no car failure, they maybe inch forward by a few $100s at the end of the year. That's the $2,000 life. Not hopeless, but not building. Treading water in a current that never stops. $10,000 a month. Now something shifts. $10,000 a month is $120,000 a year. After taxes, depending on your state, you're taking home somewhere around $7,000 to $7,500 a month. Let's call it $7,200. This is a software engineer 3 years into their career, a mid-level marketing director, a nurse practitioner, a small business owner with a decent operation. At first glance, this looks like the promised land compared to what we just described. And in some ways, it genuinely is. Rent is no longer a crisis. You can afford a decent one-bedroom or even a two-bedroom in most cities without it consuming more than 25% of your take-home. Your grocery budget is a preference, not a calculation. You can absorb a $400 emergency without losing sleep. But here's what surprises most people when they reach this level. They expected to feel rich. They don't. And there's a very specific reason for that. At $10,000 a month gross, you have entered what economists sometimes call the aspirational class. You can afford the markers of a comfortable life, a nice car payment, dinners out, a vacation once or twice a year, but you're still trading time for every single dollar. If you stop working, the money stops. Immediately. You are not wealthy. You are well compensated. The distinction matters enormously. Here's where this income level becomes genuinely interesting from a financial mechanics perspective. If this person is disciplined, and that's a significant if, they can start doing something the $2,000 earner mathematically cannot. They can invest. If they contribute 15% of their gross income to a 401k and a Roth IRA, that's $1,800 a month going into assets. Over 30 years, with average market returns around 7% annually after inflation, that compounds to roughly $2.2 million. $2.2 million from a salary that never grew beyond this point. That's the compound interest story everyone tells. And it's real. But there's a catch that the motivational finance world glosses over. You have to be willing to live on roughly $5,400 a month while earning $7,200. After rent, car, utilities, food, and basic lifestyle, you're looking at a margin of maybe $500 to $800 of true discretionary flexibility. That doesn't sound like a $120,000 life, does it? This is where lifestyle inflation becomes the silent killer of the middle-income earner. The car upgrade, the nicer apartment, the subscription stack that quietly grew to $300 a month without anyone noticing. The weekend trips that feel justified because, frankly, they are exhausting themselves at a demanding job. Every lifestyle upgrade is rational in isolation. Together, they consume the exact margin that separates this person from actually building generational wealth. The $10,000 earner also meets the tax system in a new and somewhat jarring way. They are now in a bracket where they are paying real federal taxes, somewhere around 22 to 24% marginal rate. They're paying into Social Security and Medicare at the full rate. They're probably not rich enough to have access to the aggressive tax strategies the truly wealthy use, but they're making enough that the IRS is very interested in them. The person at $2,000 a month pays very little in federal income tax. The person at $50,000 a month has an army of accountants finding deductions and structures that dramatically reduce their effective rate. The $10,000 earner is often paying the highest effective percentage of any group. Full rate, limited deductions, maximum exposure. There's a dark irony in that. The people working the hardest in the most demanding professional roles often pay the highest percentage of their income to the government. The system isn't malicious, but it's not neutral either. Still, and this is important, this income level is genuinely transformative compared to the first. The psychological weight of constant financial scarcity starts to lift. You can make decisions based on preference rather than desperation. Your health outcomes improve. Your stress levels drop. Your ability to plan further than 3 weeks into the future becomes possible. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, quite significant. But you are still, fundamentally, one bad year away from a serious problem. Job loss, divorce, medical crisis, any of these can unwind years of careful progress at this income level. The buffer exists. The buffer is not deep. $50,000 a month, $600,000 a year. Let's stop for a moment because we need to be clear about who we're talking about. This is not a celebrity. This is not a tech billionaire. This is a senior partner at a law firm, a regional VP at a Fortune 500 company, a successful real estate investor with a substantial portfolio, a doctor who also owns their practice, a business owner generating real revenue. There are more of these people than you think, and the way money functions at this level is so different from what we've described that it's almost a different subject entirely. After taxes, and this is where the complexity begins, this person might take home somewhere around $32,000 to $35,000 a month. More if they're structured intelligently as a business entity. Significantly more if they have significant deductions. Let's work with $35,000 a month. Their lifestyle, even a generous one, costs maybe $10,000 to $15,000 a month. Nice home, premium car, good food, travel, private school for the kids if they have them. Let's call it $12,000. That leaves $23,000 a month, every month, to deploy. This is where money stops being a resource and starts being a machine. At this level, you are not saving. You are allocating. You are not hoping the market does well. You are diversified across asset classes that most people will never access. Private equity, commercial real estate, business investments, tax-advantaged structures that require a minimum net worth to even enter. You have a financial advisor who proactively calls you. You have a CPA who does tax planning, not just tax filing. You have an estate attorney. You have a team of people whose job is to make sure your money is working as efficiently as possible. And here's the number that changes everything. At $50,000 a month, if this person invests conservatively and their assets generate just a 5% annual return, they are earning $2,500 a day in passive income. Not from working, from money moving while they sleep. Compare that to our $2,000 earner who generated $24 in interest for the entire year. Same calendar, same 24 hours in a day. The math just works at a completely different speed. This is the mechanism that the wealthy understand intuitively and the rest of us understand intellectually, but rarely feel in our bones. Money generates money, and once you have enough of it, the returns alone exceed what most people earn working full-time. There's also a profound psychological shift at this level. Risk becomes an opportunity instead of a threat. When you have a significant financial cushion, a market downturn is a buying opportunity. A business that's struggling might be worth acquiring at a discount. A real estate crash means you can pick up properties that other people are being forced to sell. Volatility, which is terrifying to someone with no buffer, is actually profitable to someone with deep reserves. This is the structural advantage that compounds over time. The rich get richer not just because they have more money, but because the entire risk architecture of their life is inverted. And then there are the taxes. A person earning $50,000 a month as a W-2 employee would pay substantial federal income taxes, but almost nobody earning at this level is a W-2 employee. They're structured as an S corporation, or a partnership, or they're drawing capital gains, or they're depreciating real estate assets against their income, or all of the above simultaneously. The effective tax rate at this income level, with proper structuring, can be dramatically lower than that $10,000 a month professional grinding through a corporate job. Warren Buffett famously noted that he paid a lower effective tax rate than his secretary. That's not a glitch. That's a feature of a system that was built, over decades, by people with lobbying budgets. This isn't a political statement. It's just the math. The bigger picture. So let's step back and look at what we've actually described. At $2,000 a month, you are surviving. The system charges you more for being poor and offers you almost no mechanisms for accumulation. At $10,000 a month, you are competing. You have real tools available: retirement accounts, investment vehicles, the ability to absorb shocks. But you are still primarily exchanging time for money, and the margin between your income and lifestyle determines everything. At $50,000 a month, you have crossed a threshold where money itself starts working on your behalf. The tools available to you are categorically different. The risk landscape is inverted. The system actively rewards your position. And here's the uncomfortable question this raises. We talk about financial literacy as if it's the variable that separates these lives. Work hard, learn about investing, live below your means, and the $50,000 life can be yours. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes discipline and skill and timing and a reasonable amount of luck combine to move someone from the first tier to the second, or even the third. But what the financial literacy conversation rarely acknowledges is that the rules are different at each level. The advice that applies to someone at $50,000 a month is not just inaccessible to someone at $2,000 a month. It's irrelevant. It presumes a margin that doesn't exist. It assumes a safety net that was never installed. The math doesn't care how hard you work. The math cares how much capital you have, how efficiently it's deployed, and how long it's had to compound. So the real question isn't how to become financially literate. The real question is, which game are you actually playing? And does the strategy you're using match the game you're in? Because the grocery store looks the same from both sides of the checkout line. But it isn't. If this made you think differently about where you are and where you're headed, take 30 seconds and subscribe. Every video on this channel is built to give you the framework, not just the facts. Hit like if this one earned it, and share it with someone who needs to see the math laid out this way. The next video will make this one look simple.